This is a new week. Gardner Webb comes into Dowdy Ficklin Stadium. Gardner Webb last year was 7-6, 5-0 in the Big South. Finished first in the Big South last year, before losing to William and Mary in the second round of the FCS playoffs. We're going to bring on Phil Constantino to the podcast. Phil, how are we doing, my friend? Welcome to the Boneyard Podcast.
I was listening to you guys the last few minutes, and I felt like I was back home in New York listening to WFAN after a Yankees game. Jeez. I get you 0-3, but
man, the sky is falling here. We're not in Greenville. We both live in Winston-Salem, but the sky is falling. It feels like around East Carolina.
Yeah. It's not a good feeling.
Yeah, I don't know. I was expecting to at least be 1-2 going into week 4. I mean, had you told me 1-2, I would have felt okay, knowing that we had to play Marshall, Michigan, and App State. I went in a weird order there, but knowing that we had to play those 3 teams, 3 really good FBS teams that are vying to win their conference, and yeah, it kind of it stings right now. It does not feel good. But talk to us about Gardner Webb, man.
I tell you what, the Gardner Webb running Bulldogs didn't expect to be 1-2. So
yeah. I mean, it's tough times here. But Gardner Webb coming into Dowdy. Y'all came in what was it? 2 years ago? 3 years ago?
That would have been 2019. That would have been the year before I got to Gardner Webb.
Really? Wow.
It was not pretty. Well, I mean, you guys were probably happy after that one, but
I mean, that was trying to think 2019 4-8 season, 4-8 season. So I mean, hey, it wasn't a 3-9 season. That's off the top of my head. Josh on the 1s and 2s can probably fact check that to make sure. But I mean, look, that was a win, but look, we haven't won many in the last decade or so. So, yeah.
I'll tell you what, it's a very different Gardner Webb program since then. Obviously, new staff, but a very different program since then.
So, outside of the coaching staff, I mean, what would you say is the one thing that's changed? I mean, maybe it's culture-wise, maybe it's, recruiting-wise. So,
yeah. Well, I'll be completely honest when I say this. In Gardner Webb's history in Division I had kind of been an afterthought in the area. It was the small little thing, a little outside of Charlotte, off to the west. Not a lot of people knew a whole lot about, and really overwhelmingly wasn't that successful, and wasn't that successful in football last year. I mean, that was the first time in almost a decade that they went over 500 in football. That just didn't happen. Now, granted, usually in Gardner Webb's case, you're playing 2 to 3 FBS games a year. That's part of being a small school. Budgets are what they are, and playing in the FCS. So it's hard to get over 500, a lot harder than it would be in East Carolina's case. But it's a program that was not successful since 2002 when it transitioned up to Division I. It did win early on in the transition after coming off of those Division II years where they were really good at the end. Early on in the transition, they won a couple of games early, but it didn't qualify them for the postseason. They won Big South Championship early, didn't qualify them for the postseason. It was a 4-team league at the time. And last year was the first Big South Championship in 19 years. And really, I would venture to say the first truly championship successful year of Division I, and the first time the program ever went to the FCS playoffs. So how'd they get there? They brought in a new coach in December of 2019, Trey Lamb. Obviously, pandemic hits. Fall of 2020 is jacked up. He coaches a 4-game season in the spring of 2021. So he tells you this is really year 3, not year number 4, because it started in the fall of 2021 when they really were able to start building. But also, I would even say before bringing in Coach Lamb, there wasn't necessarily in investment from the top at the school and making athletics great after the transition to Division One. And I do have to give a lot of credit to the president of the school, William Downs, because he's a big school guy. I think he spent some time in East Carolina. He grew up an NC State fan and went to school there and was involved in NC State. His family's been involved there for a long time. And he wanted Gardner Webb athletics to be good and just simply put the money and the resources have been put into it. Right before, as he was announced, before he officially took office as president, is when the basketball team went to the NCAA tournament in 2019. And that was kind of the spark. That was the first big one. And then they all started falling in line. And last year as a whole, the athletic department won 3 championships, their most ever, winning the football championship. 21-0 season in women's basketball was the best season in the history of the Big South Conference, men's or women's ever in basketball. And the men's tennis team also won a championship. So if I'm going really big picture, back to the last time you would have seen this athletic department, the last time you would have seen this football team, it starts with the investment from the president. That's Dr. Downs. And I believe if my timeline adds up right, the last time you would have seen Gardner Webb at Dowdy-Ficklin would have been his first season, or first year, I should say, at Gardner Webb. So before his impact was really felt.
For sure. Artie?
Yeah, Phil, I just want to ask you this. What were the expectations for Gardner Webb, coming into this season after all the success last year, coming into this season, and then after 3 games, should you have the 1-2 start, which I know is disappointing? What are the expectations now after these first 3 games?
Championship. I mean, FCS playoffs. They return. This doesn't happen in college football nowadays, right? Especially at the FCS level, because when you have good players, they go up. They returned 17 starters from a championship team last year. They return, and that's 17 positions, because on the defense alone, they have 17 guys going into this year who have regular starting experience, albeit a half a season, whatever. So 17 out of 22 positions, they return starters. You do that in college football nowadays, you're going to be pretty good. You're going to expect to be pretty good. Now, they did have to replace the quarterback. Bailey Fisher graduated, reigning Big South Offensive Player of the Year. He was a 2-year starter at Gardner Webb. He was with Trey Lamb previously when Trey was the offensive coordinator at Tennessee Tech, where Bailey was an all-conference player in the Ohio Valley. There was a chemistry there, and he had an ability, although he may have been undersized, he had the ability to play really well at the FCS level, and was really a dual threat quarterback. So they had to replace him. Otherwise, it's a roster that's intact. I mean, even the kicker and the punter are the same guy from last year. The all-conference long snapper is the same guy from last year. So if you were to tell me 3 weeks in, 1-2, or you were to tell me back at the preseason that 3 weeks in, they'd be 1-2, I would tell you that Gardner Webb fans would be disappointed. And I think that they're all disappointed in Boiling Springs, just a little bit. Obviously, they're aware that everything's still right in front of them. But if you listen to Trey Lamb's video press conference this week, you got the point. So,
yeah, for sure. And that kind of sounds like, ECU coming off 2 decent seasons, not championship level seasons, but 2 decent seasons. That I guess it feels like we're kind of in the same spot. Yes, y'all are 1-2. You lost a game to App State. So hey, y'all look more competitive against App State than we did.
It feels like, from what I've gathered, and I think this is, I got to say, you guys have some fan base, by the way, because this is the 4th interview I've done this week. Podcasts, local radio, everything. So give credit to ECU fans. You guys have some fan base. But the sense that I've gotten from listening to you guys and from doing some of the interviews and talking to some of the folks out in the eastern part of the state is that the sky is falling, that the hot seat is on Coach Houston. That it's not that at Gardner Webb. It's a sense of disappointment, because I think that they really thought they had a chance to beat Appalachian State. Mm-hmm. And they were up on Appalachian State with 5 minutes left to go in the third quarter. And then just a couple of bad mistakes, a shanked punt, flips field. And next thing you know, it's, 3 straight scores unanswered. They lose the game by 21. But in Gardner Webb's position, you're going into that game. Previously under Trey Lamb, they've played 5 FBS games. They were in 4 of them, probably could have, maybe should have won 3 of them. Had the ball down by less than a touchdown, driving in on the final drive, and either didn't convert on 4th down or threw a pick. So they've had chances in these FBS games. They have been close. They've been blown in 6 FBS games now. They've been blown out in 1 in 3 years under Trey Lamb. So they really thought they had a chance to win that game. And that was an incredibly disappointed locker room, which I don't know that you would usually see when you hang in it for 3 quarters, FCS team versus FBS team. Then they turn around, they beat Elon. It was a little bit ugly in the end. Elon's a perennial power in this area. They finished 17th in the country in the FCS last year. They were a playoff team a season ago. They could be a playoff team this year. They beat Elon at home by a touchdown, but they were up 2 touchdowns with 6 minutes left. Costly fumble. Next thing you know, it's a tie game, and it requires a minute-long drive to go win it with 14 seconds left. So it was kind of an ugly win, but it was a win, and it might be the most signature FCS non-conference win of Trey Lamb's tenure. And then last week, that was just, for lack of a better way to say it, and I don't think anyone in the program would disagree, that was just a clunker against Tennessee State. They made every mistake possible and still only lost the game by 2. They play an average game, and they're probably 2 touchdowns better than Eddie George's Tennessee State team. So I still think that it's not this sky is falling. It's disappointment. They feel like they should be 2-1. They feel like, some people feel like they could be, maybe should be 3-0. It's a championship program that still thinks if they go run the table in conference play, we'll have a shot to win the new Big South OVC Association. They're a team that, even if they don't win the association, if they take care of business at the FCS level, maybe they pull off an upset this week, well, they're probably going to get an at-large bid to the FCS playoffs if they do that. And they're still, even at 1-2, a lot of folks expect them to be back in the rankings soon. So it's not a sky is falling mentality. It is definitely a level of disappointment, because this program has gone from being not a great program to a championship level program. But there's a little disappointment there. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it for you.
And Phil, I do want to ask you this, because you're absolutely right. We are acting like the sky's falling in Greenville, and deservedly so, because we're starting 0-3. We weren't really expecting to start 0-3. But I mean, Gardner Webb, they're coming into to Dowdy, and they're not playing a juggernaut, right? I mean, they're playing a team that is reeling, struggling, still trying to figure things out in their own right. How does Gardner Webb feel coming into this game? I mean, this could be a huge upset victory on the road for them, and they should feel good about that coming in. How do they feel from your perspective?
Yeah, well, I'll say this. I think the sense that I've gathered from the East Carolina fan base is that there actually is a level of fear in playing Gardner Webb. Not that you guys are 0-3, but also in the fact that the record of close games versus the FBS that I just mentioned. I mean, quite frankly, they should have beaten Coastal Carolina and Liberty last year. And those are not slouches of FBS teams. Those are a pretty good group of 5 teams. So I think they can win. They're a little banged up, a couple of injuries, a couple of positions. Guys didn't play a ton of snaps last game. I bet the coaching staff, if you could get them off the record, would probably tell you, and I haven't talked to them about this, but they would probably tell you we were limiting some guys because we thought we could take care of Tennessee State. I think they hope to have some of those guys a little healthier this week and have them back. And I also think that, if anything, it was 3 games in, but they weren't playing great football. And I wonder if, in a way, 1-2 was better than 2-1 right now, because it does refocus them. Because again, 3 weeks in, even if the 50-yard field goal with a few seconds left from Tennessee State, even if that misses, and for a while it looked like it was going wide to the left, even if that misses, you win by 1. You feel great about it at 2-1. I don't know. It wasn't a great performance by any means. So to an extent, they might be refocused. And I do ultimately believe that good will come of this. And I do ultimately believe they're still a championship team with a up and coming, damn good young coach and talent all over the field. So.
For sure. Now, I mean, let's talk a little bit about this offense. Matthew Caldwell, first year starter after the quarterback graduates. Talk to us a little bit about him. Talk to us a little bit about this offense. What can we expect to see?
Well, I don't know what role the rain potentially could play in this. I know we've got storms coming up the coast here, and everyone's been monitoring the weather. But in a normal dry day, you're going to see an offense that if 10 seconds run off the play clock, they snapped it too slow. They like to move. Minimum 90 snaps a game if they can. Out hustle you, outrun you, line up and snap the football before you can get set up. Don't sub so that you can't sub, and just keep it moving. The goal is always 90 to 95 snaps. I actually asked this. I asked Trey Lamb this a couple weeks ago in his office before the Elon game. Elon's traditionally a bigger FCS team, kind of built like an FBS team. They like to ground and pound the football. And he kind of had this little smile. He says to me, "Yeah, we're going to run on them." So I asked him what's the most snaps he's ever snapped in a game as a play caller. The answer was 108. It's mind-boggling to me. Absolutely mind-boggling. Now, the new clock rules you would think would take a few off of that, right? Except for the fact that week against Elon, they snapped the football 91 times. So they're going to move. That's not going to change. Matthew Caldwell as a quarterback, he's 6'4", built like the prototype. Big arm. Jacksonville State transfer. It's his second year in the program. He transferred out of Jacksonville State when Rich Rod and staff came in. They've always liked him, and he showed some flashes last year. Bailey Fisher missed one start injured, and Matthew Caldwell played pretty well. They've always thought he was talented. It was a four-way quarterback battle in the offseason, even though he always had the edge, I think. Geno English was a transfer that came in from Florida State that pushed him all the way to the end. And he won the quarterback job. There was concern going into game one about some accuracy, I believe. And then he came out against Appalachian State and in front of 36,000 fans, and his first time in his career as a true starter going into the season. Trey Lamb thought he was one of the bright spots throughout the course of the game. And he told his team that in the locker room after the game. And he said, if we're good at that position, which was a concern going into the year, we can really take off. I think sometimes as fans and in the media, we overhype the importance of quarterbacks. Coaches will tell you it's a complete effort, but it's hard to win with a bad one. And they have one that they think is pretty good. Last game was not his best, but I also counted 6 drop passes during the game. He was also pressured by what I think is an underrated Tennessee State team that Eddie George has turning a corner, and a defense that didn't let a receiver get open all day, and a defensive line that didn't give him a second to breathe all day. So he's a pretty good player. He's not necessarily a runner. He can run. Trey has actually told me he's more straight line speed, faster than Bailey Fisher, their previous quarterback, but he's a little taller and lankier, so he doesn't have the shiftiness to him that you would expect from a read option quarterback, to stick the ball in the gut of the running back, pull it, and then take off and get you a bunch of yardage. He can run. He's a little hesitant of a runner, and he does look to throw when probably he should run. That said, he's got a big arm. He is becoming more and more comfortable challenging down the field each game. Out of the field, typical RPO, spread option. Let's stretch the field. Quick hitters to the wide receivers. There's been a lot of that through 3 games with a slow progression of let's let Matthew Caldwell air it out and try a couple of chances deep. So that's what you're going to see. You're going to see a young guru of an offensive guy. We do a coach's clicker segment every week, and I'm blown away by how intelligent Trey Lamb is as a play caller, and how intelligent he is about reading defenses and the game of football. But he kind of fits the mold of these young spread option, hurry up head coaches, and that's what you're going to see.
Now, on the flip side of that, defensively, who are some guys defensively that can cause ECU's offense some headaches, some nightmares, some troubles heading into this game?
I'll start with one player, Ty French, multiple-time All-American, number 47. You're going to notice him right away.
Okay.
He's a defensive end who they sometimes will stand up and play as a linebacker that roams around. I noticed this last game. So first play of the game against Tennessee State, comes off the edge, sacks the quarterback. I think he forced a fumble that Tennessee State recovered. Second play of the game, tackle for loss, stuffs and run. Third play of the game, offensive linemen are pointing out 47, 47. Now, usually that happens with a Mike linebacker, not with a defensive end, right? 47, 47. And he stands there and waves back at them. Here I am. So he's that kind of player. He is. I've had coaches tell me this before, that we have to keep an eye on 47 and we have to know where he is. And this is prior to this year too. We have to know where he is at all times. He was a little bit undersized, and because of the extra year back during the pandemic, his freshman year was Trey Lamb's first year. He's one of Trey Lamb's first big recruits. And I think if you get Trey on the record, he'll probably tell you that if not for the pandemic and rosters being crowded, Ty French doesn't necessarily fall to us. But he was a little bit undersized, a little bit thin. He's 6'3", 230 now in his fourth year. And FBS schools want him, and he has stayed at Gardner Webb. And he'll finish out his degree and probably go on to the NFL next and have a real shot. There are scouts at practices all the time that are looking at him, and occasionally I'll roam the sidelines, talk to them, and every single time, the first guy that they say is going to have a shot in an NFL camp is Ty French. So that's the guy. There are all conference players that return at every level of this defense. I told you before about the starters that return. Josh Reardon is in his fourth year as the defensive coordinator. He's been with Trey Lamb from the beginning. But he is the guy to keep an eye on, because 3 games in, and he has probably been the best player on the field in all 3 games, including against Appalachian State.
Love that. Yeah, I mean, those are the types of guys that win you ball games. I mean, we talk about offense being what you need to win a ball game. You got to score points, but when you have a guy like that on defense that can kind of play DN, but also play this kind of hybrid linebacker role, I mean, it's honestly, I mean, it's impressive. So excited to see him this Saturday.
I'll tell you what, he is the most intimidating dude in the world on the football field. The most.
So he's the first one off the bus.
You don't want to walk past him. He gets the nasal strips going. He's got this growl. Off the field, I have never met a more fun-loving, outgoing, just great kid. Great kid. He's a father. He really is just he's that guy's going places. I can't say enough positive words about him. And but on the football field, I stay away from him.
I'm looking at this picture of him, and yeah, like I want no part of him.
I'll tell you a little story. So we were actually. I was with them driving to Media Day back in the summer. It was him and Nari Gaither, All-American running back. And I'm in the car with him and a couple of other administrators, and we're driving out to Nashville for Media Day. And when I tell you, the entire time he's just laughing up a storm. The entire time. I've never had a kid like that. 6 hours in the car, laughing up a storm. Awesome. He's just a good kid.
That's awesome.
I mean, just looking at him, that he looks the part. It looks like he's taking eye black. Like in this picture, it's literally called Ty French eyes. And like this picture, it just looks like he's taking the eye black, and it's just like all over his face. I don't know. Just staring down a quarterback. Yeah. Good luck, Alex Flynn.
I think he's a 3-time All-American at this point too.
Yeah, that's absurd.
Lists. Yeah, Gardner Webb's lucky to have him, and lucky that he stayed around. And I think that kind of tells you the kind of kid that he is too. So,
love that. Yeah, I mean, you talked about it. I mean, I think this week is a game that ECU fans are worried about after the 0-3 start.
Definitely nervous. Yeah.
And I think rightfully so. We know that Gardner Webb is a formidable opponent coming into Dowdy, and with how our offense has struggled at times, and how this team has struggled to kind of get going at times, it is a worry. Seeing the running Bulldogs run down 264 to Greenville. I mean, all in all, what happens? I mean, do you think Gardner Webb wins this weekend?
I can't say here that they're going to win. I mean, you know how the odds are stacked against you and as an FCS opponent. And I was with Trey Lamb right after the game at Appalachian State. He was talking to the media, and he said, these things kind of go according to a script. And the script is one of two ways. You either come out and you're just overmatched, you get blown out right off the bus. And you've seen that happen a lot in these FCS games. I mean, he was an FCS player at Tennessee Tech. He's played in them, he's coached in them. His career as a player, assistant coach, and head coach has been in the FCS. So he's had a lot of these. Or you're in it because you have enough talent at the top end. You have guys like Ty French. But ultimately, over the course of 4 quarters, those 20 extra scholarships that divide FBS from FCS make a big difference. And there's just more talent down the depth chart as guys get worn out throughout the game, as you start rolling through defensive linemen, et cetera. Offensive line just starts beating up on them. So I'm not going to sit here and say that Gardner Webb will win. But I think they have a shot. I certainly do. And I think a lot of people in Boiling Springs, North Carolina, think that they have a shot. And I would say that looking back at last week, it hurts. From our perspective, we're looking at how does Gardner Webb get to the FCS playoffs, and it's easiest to get that at-large bid and get in like they did last year. That's more complicated in what is now a 10-team league, where they're not even going to play the other favorite in the league, Southeast Missouri State, this year. So from that perspective, last week's loss to Tennessee State really hurts. But from another perspective, you go beat East Carolina this week, you're right back in business, and you're really open for an at-large selection. Right. And maybe last week's loss is a good thing because it was needed, because they just were not playing disciplined football. And so I don't think that they're going to I don't think that they're going to I can't say that they're going to win. I think they could. I definitely think they have a shot. And I know this, that East Carolina fans and that East Carolina team, unlike many other teams that maybe they snuck up on, they're not going to sneak up on them, because the track record now of Gardner Webb is, okay, these guys are good. They know what they're doing. They're going to give us a good shot. So I expect it to be a close game, but you never know what's going to happen in the end.
For sure. Well, Phil, we appreciate you coming on. Sorry we made you wait a little bit. We got started a little bit late tonight, but
muted.
Yeah, and then I was muted and then nobody told me. I wasn't.
No, we told you. You just weren't paying attention, but that's okay.
I'm sorry. I was reading off the notes. I was looking at our show notes. That was a rookie mistake. Hey, I'll walk the plank on that one. That's on me. That's 2 weeks in a row I've gone muted. Look, I've been sick for the better half of a week and a half, and I get in these little coughing spurts. I go muted, try to be professional with it, and then I forget to unmute. Then hey, that's on me. I take full responsibility.
A cough button, just one button.
Yeah. Hey, we've got a new producer on the show. This is actually his first show with us. Shout out Josh on the ones and twos. But yeah, Josh, figure that out. I don't understand it. I don't know it. I need one of those buttons like you guys have up in the booth where I'm not. You can't hear my mic. So thanks again for joining us, and safe travels down to Greenville this weekend. Yep. And wish you the best of luck after Saturday. How's that?
I appreciate it. Good talking with you guys. Thank you. Enjoy the game this weekend.
Absolutely, Phil. Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Phil.